In Disney Epic Mickey, story is critical because it's the thing that gives importance to all the player choices and player actions.
You're actually being taken through a story, but it's a story of your own telling.
Disney's always been about telling a story, getting people interested, getting an emotion going, getting a laugh going, and the game pulls that off.
It's not just you interacting with a bunch of pixels. It's you interacting with characters that even you've forgotten about as Mickey Mouse. So story is what provides that kind of context. It makes what the player does important. The birth of the idea actually came from Disney itself. A lot of people think that I went to Disney and said, give me Mickey Mouse, and that's not the way it happened at all. I sat down with Disney talking about a fantasy game and a science fiction game I wanted to do, and they were, not particularly interested in it, frankly. Instead, they asked me if I was interested in doing a Mickey Mouse game, and my eyes opened up and my jaw hit the ground, and I said, well, yeah. And then all these Disney executives, it was so cute, they said, well, we have a concept. Is it okay if we pitch it to you? And I'm sitting there going, well, yeah, sure. and they did, and it was genius. It included some of the foundational elements that are still part of the game today. The idea of a world for forgotten and rejected characters, bringing Oswald back. All that came from within Disney. The key to game stories is to recognize the place of story in games. It's not about an author telling a story to a reader. It's not about a director conveying information to a passive audience that just interprets what they're seeing on the screen. It's about providing situations, problems that are personally significant to players that they then get to decide how to interact with.
In Disney animation, that was one of the things that was extremely important to Walt Disney, was that it's the story that ties everything together. That's the journey that the audience, the player goes on, and that's what we try to tie into.
It really runs core and parallel with Warren's philosophy of playstyle matters, because you're playing as Mickey Mouse.
Making sure that we had a believable and impactful story throughout the game made so much of this game happen.
If story is about significance, about making player choices significant and interesting, you have to have something more going on than just beat the bad guy. In this case, I knew I wanted to tell a story about family. When you have Mickey and his older brother, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, as your central characters, that's a brother story. And so I knew I wanted to play with that. Even though what you're doing is, you're deciding whether to erase your enemies or befriend your enemies by using paint, the real story is about you reconnecting with your brother. It's about how important are family and friends to you. But that's the key. It's how important is it to you? It's about, hey, how do you feel about this? You tell me through the play choices that you make. That's what makes a great game story. It's about this dialogue between, me in this case and the team, and every person who plays. Disney, in an 80-plus year history, he created stories and characters that touched all of us. And when you create that much, some of it isn't quite going to work out.
This is 80 years of history sort of together in one piece for the first time that players can interact with.
There's a lot of stuff there. There's enough there for 100 games.
I wanted to just honor that rich creative history and remind people not just about the things that they remember, but all that stuff that they've forgotten.
Getting the opportunity to visit, the Disney archives and just look at how much information has been stored over these past 80 years is mind-blowing.
You get to see these old pre-production drawings from Fantasia, or what Pinocchio was going to look like, or Captain Hook in blue. Really? Tons of cool stuff to see.
Now, as a fan of Disney animations, it was a great opportunity for us to go back, relive a lot of the characters I loved as a child, and then reintroduce them for today's market.
Some of the stuff is so cool, we don't know why it ended up in an archive and didn't make it to screen or to print. So we were really excited to be able to grab some of those things, pull them out, and give them new life.
The problem wasn't what to put in. The problem was what to put out, because Disney's history is so rich and there are so many characters and places to choose from. The weeding out process was a nightmare.
The whole story around Disney Epic Mickey is about remembering these forgotten characters. And not only is Mickey doing that, but the player is doing that as well. And so their role kind of became this unique and interesting part of the story in the game, because as you, the player, go through, you're learning about characters that you may have never seen before in the Disney archives. And now you're remembering them as well as allowing Mickey to remember them.
In Oswald's case, we had to remind people what his personality was like, what his abilities were, what made him one of the most popular stars in the late 20s. For some of the other guys, you know, it was really, they're kind of foils for Mickey. They're ways to remind Mickey that even he's forgotten his old friends. We've got a character who himself has forgotten characters like Clarabelle Cow and Horace Horsecollar and the Mad Doctor and Gus the Gremlin. Those are characters that in some cases he interacted with a bunch in his early cartoons, and so we get to have him play the role of the player. So we can show kind of the sadness of the characters who have been forgotten by Mickey and by the player, and use them to evoke some emotions in the player that I think will enrich the experience. We really tried to be as true as we could to the reality of these characters as the Disney animators and as Disney himself created them. One of the first rules I set up for the team was, if something from the Disney universe, that creative history, works for us, then we're going to use it. We're not going to create or change it.
As we went through the archives and looked at the different characters, we saw all that charm, all of that character, all of that personality that really has been forgotten. And that was a kind of big decision point in pulling those characters back into the game so people can remember them and enjoy them again.
This team really embraced the challenge of immersing themselves in Disney's history. Disney Epic Mickey is, in a really strange sense, a history lesson. I hope nobody perceives it that way. I don't want people put off by that. But at the end of the day, players are going to learn something about Disney's creative past. Disney fans in particular, I think, are going to have a great time playing the Where Did That Come From game. Because almost everything in the game is inspired by something real. I was in when they said, you want to make a Mickey Mouse game. But when they told me they had gotten Oswald back, I lost it. I mean, I was done. I'm an old animation buff. I mean, I knew about Oswald before they mentioned him to me, which is kind of rare. And when they said, you're going to have the opportunity to present Oswald on screen in a new Disney story for the first time since 1928, I mean, what an honor.
Well, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit was Walt Disney's first cartoon star, and he predates Mickey, of course.
He's such a rich character, and if you look back at the old animation, it was so fun and so exciting.
Oswald was different from other animated film stars of that time. Those cartoons that Walt and Ub made were little gems of storytelling. They weren't just a string of gags. Oswald would fall in love, have to deal with a rival. He would go to war. He would do all sorts of things. He was way ahead of his time. You know, very quickly, the Oswald cartoons became among the most popular silent cartoons of the late 20s. Oswald was a big star. In the late 20s, after just about 18 months of prominence, Walt went to his distributor to renew his contract and wanted more money to make better cartoons. I mean, even then, Walt was all about quality. And the distributor said, no, not only are we not going to give you more, we're going to take your staff. We own the rights to the character, check your contract, and you're out of work.
After losing that character, Walt went back to the drawing board, literally, and Mickey Mouse comes into being. And so Mickey Mouse goes down a path of success no one saw coming. Maybe Walt did, but you know, he is what he is. Everyone on Earth knows who Mickey Mouse is. And Oswald just kind of disappeared.
There are all sorts of stories about how Mickey was created, but he was created only because the rights to Oswald had been lost. That's the tragedy of Oswald. He really was poised to be the most successful and popular cartoon star in the world. But Mickey came along, and the rest is history.
Oswald came back into the Disney fold in 2006, not to star in Disney Epic Mickey, but rather to serve as a catalyst for the game, because really he was the first forgotten character in Disney history.
That's kind of the factual story. The heart of that story, though, is Oswald is Mickey Mouse's older brother. And Oswald looks at Mickey's success and just says, I was famous. You stole the life that should have been mine.
We ran with that idea, not only playing with his kind of sibling rivalry, the forgotten brother, but we also used him as a path for redemption for Mickey in his own arc, finding out that he had family that he had forgotten or didn't even know about, but then also trying to find his way through crafting this relationship once again with this person that he didn't even know was family.
He's an emotional touchstone for Mickey, for players. As you see Oswald change in the way he's responding to Mickey because of what the player is doing as Mickey, you can sort of gauge your progress. Oswald ultimately does re-engage with Mickey. Mickey does redeem Oswald. And that growing relationship is a measure of the player's progress. I love Oswald, and I want to make him a hero too. That's, kind of goal 1.5 for this project. I remind people how incredible a character Oswald is and set him up for success as a cartoon star, as a plush toy, you name it. I want Oswald everywhere because he deserves it.
Animation is one of the most important things I think we have to capture as a Disney studio and as a Disney game.
Mickey in stillness is obviously Mickey. I mean, any combination of three circles is identified as Mickey by almost everyone on the planet. But Mickey in motion is what makes Mickey. The way Mickey moves is critical. Boy, did everybody here watch a lot of cartoons. We have all of the Mickey cartoons, and all the Oswald cartoons, and all the features. And we would sit here and watch them over lunch and talk about what made them special and what made them great and what elements we wanted to incorporate into the game.
Looking back through the archives, seeing how those characters were animated in their original roles, and bringing that to Disney Epic Mickey.
We consulted with Feature Animation, we consulted with Pixar. In making a game about Mickey Mouse, of course, the animation quality in our title had to match feature movies.
That was the kind of fidelity we were trying to achieve. I wanted Smee moving the way Smee moves. I wanted Horace Horsecollar moving the way Horace moves and Clarabelle moving the way she moves. I'm telling you, the animators nailed it. Disney has a series of lectures all the way from, some of the 9 old men up to the present. We have access to all of those, so we could learn from the masters. We had access to some of the most senior animators at Disney Feature Animation, and trust me, they critiqued our animations. There was a level of detail that those guys can get to about specific animations that I had never seen in my life. And I've been working with animators, for 30 plus years. The animators early in the project recreated moments from real Mickey cartoons.
Each one of us took a scene and reproduced it in 3D from what we saw in 2D, trying to figure out what was the appeal that drew us to Mickey in the first place.
We did extensive research just to make sure that the animators had the spot-on feel of not only the personality of those characters, but also what the Disney animators had brought to those characters to begin with.
Why did they rotate his ears this way? Why did they turn his head and cock his head this way? How do we take that and then find a balance that would work well in 3D?
We actually composited our Mickey into real Mickey cartoons, and people couldn't tell. That's when I knew we had nailed it. And it wasn't that we were literally going to imitate specific animations, but once the animators could imitate them, they knew they'd embodied the character. And for an animator, that's critical. There are clearly differences in a medium where you have 24 frames a second, and you spend 24 hours rendering 1 second of screen time, and a medium where you're trying to do 30 frames a second and render them in real time. In a game, we have completely different constraints. We're about repeated actions. We are all about magic moments, but they're magic moments that players create by combining those repeated actions in different ways in different contexts.
I have a designer I work with closely who keeps me on my toes and makes sure that I'm not putting too much into my animation that would take away from the player's experience.
It's this exquisite balancing act between beautiful animation, expressive, emotion-filled, communicative animation, and player control.
So that way when they want to turn right, it's responsive. So it's a give and take back and forth.
The animators here are expert, and the gameplay programmers are expert at balancing the need for players to be in split-second control, down to milliseconds of control, and beautifully expressive animation.
When we go back and we talk about remembering these characters, we wanted them to be remembered in the light that they were originally introduced. The animators on this team did a great job in bringing that to the game and to the player.
I look at the game and I just think we've captured the essence of Disney animation in a game. The idea for the mashup of visual styles came right out of the core concept for the game. Once you start throwing things together from 80 years of history, you're going to have stylistic inconsistencies. Once you got a mashup from a thematic standpoint, it didn't take a super genius to say, hey, let's do that visually too. We have about 5 different art styles in the game. There is that inspired by feature films, classical, beautiful look. There is the short subject look in the 2D platforming sections. But we also have CGI, intro and endgame, computer rendered graphics. A lot of our storytelling moments are told in a style that looks like storyboards or concept art brought to life. There are all these different styles coming together, but in a game that's supposed to be a mashup of 80 years of Disney history, why shouldn't the art style be a mashup too?
It took us a little bit to get our head wrapped around, how we wanted to mash up some of these inspirations, the Haunted Mansion from every different park, as well as, the Lonesome Ghost cartoons. How do those fit together?
Different animators from different periods animated differently. So we had an interesting challenge of how to merge all the different styles together.
Stylistically, you can figure that out, but from a game design standpoint, the characters that you're going to use and the mechanics and the gags from the old films and the rides, and how do you put these together in an interesting way that's going to keep the player pushing through to explore all of the little nooks and crannies to find out where those inspirations lie.
I'm hoping people will accept that, because most games go for a consistent style start to finish, and I very specifically didn't want to do that. I wanted to be inspired by a variety of Disney styles, because we had a variety of Disney styles to draw from. My favorite thing about the visual design is how beautiful each of the individual elements is, and how well they actually do fit together. Our story sequences really do look like Mary Blair's art brought to life, and our CGI cinematics, they're really powerful.
There's like these established sets of rules that people just accept when it comes to a game world. When you make a cartoon game world, all bets are off, because in cartoons, things don't do what everyone normally assumes they're going to do. So we're working with getting the player to understand the rules of the cartoon universe and then how to express themselves through those rules.
We've got these 2D travel sections that are really kind of classic platforming adventures, and there are a lot of them, and they occupy a fair amount of screen time or play time, and those are inspired direct by the short cartoons. I want players to feel like they're in Steamboat Willie and in Lonesome Ghost and in Clock Cleaners.
The 3D zones in Disney Epic Mickey, those are the bigger spaces, or the more wide open spaces, and the 2D transition levels basically connect the 3D spaces, so they're meant to be a little bit of a whimsical breather.
Those have a really cool animated style that works well in our kind of re-envisioning and revitalization of some of these characters.
You're going to have black and white characters next to color characters. You're going to have animatronics next to character costumes that are all moth-eaten, you know, and kind of decrepit looking. You're going to have musical styles from 1928 all the way up to today.
But as long as the player enjoys looking at it, enjoys traversing it, has some fun, you know, gets to interact. If we hit all those things, I think we've got a good level.
The games that are most successful are the ones that come closest to that picture I had in my head when I started. And this one, it was a pretty modeled picture. That's all I can say. I really just approached this more as a DJ spinning records, you know, taking two tunes that don't belong together. Each sounds good on its own, but they sound like something completely different when you combine them. Disneyland is kind of the foundation for everything in the game. Finding a place that everyone knows, everyone understands, everyone has been to and has feelings about, that was really important to me, that we sort of suck people in with the familiar and then sort of turn everything upside down. If Walt Disney was going to bring into existence a world for forgotten and rejected characters, what form would it take? It's going to be his fondest dream, which is to build this park where adults and kids can experience joy together and where his characters, his creations, can live forever. In that sort of imaginary creation, it wasn't born fully formed. It wasn't perfect. It was incomplete. And so Oswald, its first inhabitant, had to finish it. He sort of has a sense that there's this thing out there, this park, this beautiful place, you know, a place of magic. And so he's trying to recreate it as best he can, but he's never seen it. He's got old photographs and blueprints and stuff to work from.
So this was essentially taking that same aspect of the cartoon characters who are forgotten or rejected and applying it to Disneyland. So rides that are rejected, animatronics that are rejected, shops that are rejected, pretty much anything that was in Disneyland or was even considered for Disneyland ended up becoming part of Wasteland.
Disneyland has a lot to teach game designers. It's pretty incredible. The way the place is structured with a hub and spokes and transition areas that take you out of one place and sort of ease you into another one.
We kept looking at all of the little details in the park that had come up throughout history and what we could do to pull from each one of those. Tomorrowland itself provided us a lot of inspiration for things that had been taken out and replaced.
For a majority of the Tomorrowland Beetleworks characters, they've got elements of Tomorrowland from the theme parks in there. So you'll see little bits and pieces, and a lot of diehard Disney fans will be able to pick out certain characters or different rides.
We tell stories through space, and there is no one better than an Imagineer at doing that. What the Imagineers do has infinite lessons to teach us. There were a variety of things that we drew direct inspiration from. The first one actually was a location called Mean Street. I knew that I needed an instantly recognizable place. And so Main Street USA, that iconic image that we all have burned in our brains from early childhood, that image had to be in the game, and it had to be slightly warped.
Gremlin Village is sort of Small World, sort of utilitunnels underneath Disneyland, you know, mixed together.
It maintains the same Mary Blair feel of texture and color and, you know, just crazy circus kind of palette. Yet we come back and totally weather it and wear it and dilapidate it.
The iconic clock tower. I looked at that thing at Disneyland and I just said, that's got to be my first boss monster. That thing has to come to life.
For Lonesome Manor, we start out in the graveyard. In the park, there's actually a line that kind of meanders through the graveyard. We kept the same sort of theme, but kind of turned it into more of a platforming experience. We kept certain rooms and themes, the ballroom, the library, the stretching room.
Everyone who goes to Disney World stands there and they watch those paintings stretch and they see the flashes at the top. Well, here, you're going to interact with that stuff.
We wanted to hint, at the real place, at the real Disney, but from there we could veer off and make it as dark or crazy as we wanted it to be, which was really fun.
It really kind of falls into this world of Wasteland being something that people can identify with and feel very familiar and comfortable, but at the same time, it doesn't quite match up to reality, and of course that's as intended.
I hope it's kind of, recognizable but different, familiar yet strange, and funny but kind of sad in its own way. I want players to feel that whole range of emotions, but always recognizing that this is based on Disneyland. And frankly, if you know things about Disneyland, if you know things about Disney's history, things will be more significant than if you don't have that background. So Disney fans, I think, are going to have a blast.
One of the things that set Disney apart from the other cartoon companies back in the day, and what really propelled them to what they have become, was they were the first cartoon company to add sound to their cartoons.
If we go back before cartoons, could talk, music pretty much drove them forwards.
The turning point was with the Silly Symphonies, when they started adding music and timing the animations to the music. For us as sound designers and musicians, that's such a wealth of inspiration to draw from.
In this specific game, music is very, very important because story is so important. Story and music go very hand in hand.
It's just another layer on top of everything that builds emotion and builds connection to the game. It is part of the atmosphere. It is part of the experience that we want you to have.
I auditioned like dozens and dozens of composers and said, what is the Disney sound? What does it mean? Is it orchestration? Is it a musical style? I mean, what is it? Jim Dooley, he immediately got what I was trying to get at. I mean, that Disney style, he was able to describe it in ways that I almost understood, and he was able to capture it.
Jim Dooley did an incredible job of bringing in the concepts of classic Disney, but, making the tone slightly off-center.
This is by far the best music I've ever had in a game. There are moments where he raises you to heights of emotion that are just incredible. I mean, there's stuff in here that will bring you to tears. I promise. I asked Jim to create a Mickey theme and an Oswald theme. The thing is, it had to be flexible because in a game, you change the music based on what the player does. So he needed to create a theme that was incredibly flexible. Frankly, more flexible than I thought was possible.
The changes that we have in the music, from the ambient scoring that goes on when you're just exploring a world, to the combat music that kicks in, to the little bits of music that you get from the rides and riding them themselves, have all catered to changing that atmosphere and kind of poking at the emotions of the player.
We use the music to tell the player what Mickey is feeling. So if he's in a sad mood, the music's going to be sad. If he's happy or feeling triumphant about something, we don't say triumph on the screen like that. We play it with music.
So we have our character themes. And then on top of that, we needed themes that would be applicable to each land. Each land you visit has its own unique sound.
The music is awesome at capturing the environment and the feel of the space. So Lonesome Manor has kind of this eerie, dark, haunting tone that goes on.
Again, it's a mashup. Everything in the game is about taking things that shouldn't belong together and putting them together. The range of emotions in the score is stunning. It's not about an adrenaline rush. It's not about frowning and, being really intense. It really has become a game about smiling as you play. The range of characters in Disney Epic Mickey is pretty darn broad. Everything from the earliest black and white characters up until about the late 60s. I didn't want to get much more modern with anything than that. But the key is they're all legitimately forgotten or legitimately rejected or subtly different than the characters you might expect. Well, it is entirely a good thing that we had these characters who had some Disney past, but not a fully realized Disney life. Deciding what to include in the game was really kind of nightmare. I had a little bit of an advantage just because I really have studied cartoons for a long time, but I had a pretty good idea who I wanted in the game. Mickey Mouse has achieved the highest levels of success, fame, fortune, love in every medium he's tackled, except video games. Yeah, there have been some Mickey Mouse video games, but I want to make him a video game hero on par with the very best, with the Marios, the Sonics, the people think of when they think video games. And I'm hoping Disney Epic Mickey gets him there. Oswald the Lucky Rabbit is one of the saddest and yet funniest characters in cartoon history. He was the prototype for every cartoon rabbit that came after him, and yet completely forgotten. I knew I wanted Horace and Clarabelle, the black and white versions, because they've been replaced by the color versions, and they're kind of the reject pals. Clarabelle, sort of a busybody, she loves her garden, but a real sweetheart and a real good friend to Minnie and Mickey in the early days. Horace is a terrific character, actually. He was probably the most versatile actor in Mickey's gang. He could be a detective, he could be a cowboy, he could be anything. It's interesting that he kind of ended up getting forgotten because that kind of versatility and flexibility seems like it would be a useful thing in a cartoon series, but for some reason, he got left by the wayside.
I think one of the characters we've had the most fun with was the character of Pete. And in fact, in the game, Pete has many incarnations.
I call it the League of Petes. So around every corner, there's another Pete in a different costume. You know, oh my gosh, this time I'm dressed up as a little Dutch girl, like a Small World doll. Oh my gosh. So he's always sort of humiliated by all the costumes that he has to wear. You know, Mickey, basically, by the end of the game, I'm hoping Mickey and the player are going, another Pete?
The gremlins in the game were just ideas. They were going to make an animation short off of them, and they never got to it. So we looked at those characters, and we did what we do best, is what we brainstormed. We come up with ideas.
In some cases, like the gremlins, they didn't have any personalities. They didn't have any motion or animation or life that we could imitate. We had to come up with our own personalities and our own animation styles for them.
It brings a certain level of challenge because you've got such a high bar to live up to make them a Disney character. But I think the animators had done a great job at exploring all of the other Disney characters, that they kind of got it in their heads as to how we can make these characters fit in a Disney world that had never been there before.
Oh.
The most satisfying thing about working with lost characters and forgotten characters is remembering them and knowing that you're at least a small part of bringing them back into the public consciousness. All these characters are worthy of the love and affection of audiences. There's a little fictional thing in the game about the importance of hearts. When a character is loved by audiences and successful in cartoon, their little cartoon heart beats in their chest, right? And when they're forgotten, that heart just sort of fizzles and disappears, and then they themselves disappear and appear in the wasteland. And so the one thing that no character in Wasteland has is a heart. I get this picture when I think about Gus and old black and white Horace and the Mad Doctor, and I just feel in this weird sort of way that I'm giving them their hearts back. Their hearts are going to appear in their chests again, and they're going to pop back into the real world, and people out here are going to love them again.